Welcome to the new episode of Pop Culture Petri Dish. My name is Abe Epperson. I'm like a little baby who likes to learn about science, and I'll do the jokes, I guess. We'll both do jokes, but
hopefully.
I'm here as always with my co-host,
Christian Ramirez. I will also hopefully do some jokes, but I'm going to try to bring some scientific facts and theories into this one. You know the deal. I doubt this is your first episode of PCPD, so I don't know. Maybe it is though. And this one's a doozy. So,
So if it is your first, just know that when you hear him talk, he's the smart one. Okay, so what are we talking about today, Christian?
Today we're going to be talking about alien physiology and just kind of like basically the idea that all these aliens in science fiction that we have right now, either Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever your favorite star series is, Battlestar Galactica, I don't know.
Star noun.
Yeah, exactly. All of those, they all have aliens that are basically shaped like humans. They're humanoids. And of course, we all know the reason is because they're people in costumes, but I wanted to give an explanation, to attempt a scientific explanation as to why that could be a thing that we would run into in the universe. We already talked about like the Fermi paradox pretty extensively,
which is the theory of like where have all the aliens gone?
Yeah, exactly. And that was a pretty in-depth episode about that. And like one of the theories that came up was, well, it's because, the aliens are so different than us, then how could they communicate with us? Maybe they don't communicate verbally the way that we do. And so this was just kind of a fun, silly version, with some scientific evidence to support it, of that. Of like, okay, there are aliens that are humanoids and they can communicate with us. How did they get to be like that? Because humans are literally, it's just us and apes that basically have our basic shape on this planet.
So we're using those as kind of a control group, if you will.
Exactly. And so, yeah, that's where the idea for this alien physiology episode came from.
All right, so let's dive right in. So what's up with tits? So, yeah, you were telling me off, and I want you to explain it more. When you were doing your studies on this and looking into it, you were blown back by the amount of, like, thought that we've put in as a culture into the titology of this, because we are very unique in that we have very large breasts, humans.
Yeah,
and we keep them around for a long time. So speak to that. What do we know why, or what? Or are we just observing, going like, that's weird?
A lot of it is just going, that's weird, because like we are the only animals in the world who, when females go through puberty, they have generally larger breasts than any other mammal, and then they also retain those all the way through estrus and birth and all of this stuff, and all the way through menopause. So we're really weird in that sense, and there is absolutely no scientific consensus on why that is. There's a bunch of theories, and one of which I'm going to talk about as to why this might also apply to aliens, but there's absolutely no consensus. In 1987, a scientist and an evolutionary theorist by the name of T.M. Caro, he did a paper titled "Human Breasts: Unsupported Hypotheses Reviewed," and this covered, I think, 7 different ideas about why humans have breasts and why. 7 different ideas over 2 different categories. Ones that address the presence of breasts in humans, and the second one that address the variability in breast size. So boob science has been something that we've been curious about for a long time, because it is something that is very specific to humans, and it is still something that, on an evolutionary standpoint, we don't completely understand. Like, there's no inherent reason that we can agree upon as to why they're here. And what I'm going to just give some of the theories that Caro was trying to either review or dispute or whatever. They are that They act as releasers of male sexual behavior. They enable females to hide their reproductive condition. They allow infants to nurse from their mother's hip, which this one's going to come back later, so keep that one in mind. And the ones that address the variability in breast size is that one of them was large breasts indicate lactational potential, ability of mothers to invest prenatally in offspring, mother's fecundity, and finally her longevity. So
wait, what? Like, do boobs make you live forever? Like, what?
That was one of the theories, is that different size breasts mean that women are going to live for a longer or shorter period. That one, I think, has been pretty much debunked. I don't know that one.
That sounds like just a guy who's just like, I'm a boob oil salesman. You're going to live a very long time. It's like, I got 2 crystal balls right here for you, lady. Someone in comments, tell us if there's any basis for that.
But the problem with that one is that women with larger breasts end up also having problems like back problems.
Sure.
And plenty of women who naturally have larger breasts get breast reductions because it just... As an upright mammal, our bodies are already kind of struggling to just stay upright. People have back problems more than other animals do in general.
Right.
And so adding weights to the front of you is going to make that worse. Because we are constantly up and moving around and walking. And if you're a lever and you're adding more weight to the top of that,
it fucks your center of gravity.
Yeah, it messes up your center of gravity.
Oh, I see that.
So that's why that one kind of doesn't. I don't know where that idea came from. It was probably like in 1800s, like you said, boob oil salesman trying to convince people that larger breasts mean that you're going to live longer. But even then, women's breast size can vary depending on the rest of their body fat and their weight. So a woman who's losing weight might have her breasts shrink before the rest of her does. Or if they're gaining weight, they might grow. Like it's such a variable and weird thing that no other mammals have, that there are so many questions that nobody agrees on.
Yeah, it's a real grab bag. Remember, I'm the baby one. Sexual behavior. I thought that was interesting. It was another video that you showed me, is Why Are Human Breasts So Big? It's a Tech Insider video. Yeah. Where they were arguing about how one of the reasons would be as they got more upright and stuff like that, like the male gaze, like it's very easy to see who, quote unquote, might be female or compatible for sexual reproduction, because you can see it, as opposed to everyone on all fours, where your eyes don't really have to go much different to know what's happening there. So as we get more upright, it was an argument that evolutionarily, women who would keep their breasts or had a larger breasts for longer periods of time during their life would be seen as more sexual or more and therefore natural selection.
Yeah, it was a natural selection process. And I guess that one kind of makes sense, but it also completely
specious also.
Right. Yeah. It also completely removes the actual function of female breasts, which is to feed babies. Like that, that is what evolutionarily why they're there, and that's where this particular theory that I'm gonna talk about a little more comes in, and why it makes sort of sense to me. This one was posited by Gillian Bentley in 2001. This was at a conference, a scientific conference, and she did a presentation called "The Evolution of the Human Breast," and basically, she said that she explored the hypothesis that human breasts co-evolved with alteration of the craniofacial region, dentition, and brain size in hominids. So,
what's dentition? Do you know?
That's teeth.
Oh, it's teeth.
That's the way that our teeth.
Oh, work. Like our jaws.
Are in our jaws. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, essentially, this is more sciencey kind of talk, but I'll explain it real quick. A reduction in facial prognathism posed new problems for a lactating infant. New problems for lactating and feeding an infant. No human primates with prognathic facial areas can feed efficiently on a relatively flat breast without having nasal cavities pressed against the mother's thorax. Okay.
So wait, so it's like So it's like big boobs are like shelves for baby heads. Or like or like if you're sitting, you can put a baby on your hip, and you don't have to force the baby into your bosom.
And it's also because I think the prognathism part, which is not a word that most people hear all the time, means that our mouths and our muzzles, basically, compared to those of apes, they come back. They're sunken into our faces a lot more.
Yeah, we don't have a snout.
Right. If you think about a chimp, their mouth and their nose is all kind of one part of their face, and their nostrils actually kind of stick up, or they stick down and out, but we're the only ones that have noses the way that we do. And so the reason that all developed is because we developed the ability for speech. Our jaws became shorter, which allowed us to have more dexterous mouths and tongues and all of that to all work together, so we could verbalize and develop really complex speech patterns. And so when that happened, if women's breasts hadn't evolved to be a little bit larger, then a baby who's pressing up against them and feeding on an ape who basically their chests stay pretty much flat, it would squish their nose and it would make it harder for them to breathe. And basically it would be really detrimental to that process. And so the idea that Gillian Bentley is presenting is that because we developed this ability for speech and the physiological way of actually being able to speak complexly, it was a necessity that women grew breasts that stuck out more so that babies could feed and not have problems between feeding and breathing. Yeah. And so that that leads us to the idea that if there are other aliens that are human-like, that are in whatever Star Trek, Star Wars, all that, whether if it's a Twi'lek or I don't know a lot of Star Trek ones.
Cardassians?
Sure. Any ones that are shaped like humans. That it would make sense that they also develop breasts because they are able to speak to us using complex systems, physiological systems in their mouths and their nose and everything. And that way, and that's the reason why they are all basically shaped like humans.
Yeah, I always wonder about Star Trek because, like, I know that the Borg, like, assimilate.
Yeah.
Resistance is futile, all that. And so they take, like, body parts and they inject, like, their computer stuff.
Yeah.
So the Borg is more of, like, a computational organism.
Yeah.
So first off, why do they have a queen? And two, why does she got titties? I guess it's because the subject that became the queen just happened to be a woman.
Right.
It's weird that they chose. They're like, we must save the queen, and the queen's also a woman. That's like a weird genderism that's happening by the Borg, a computer who doesn't give a fuck.
That's true. The idea that computers have a computer mind would understand the concept of gender and consider it an important concept.
Mm-hmm. Only for sexual reproduction, right. For mammalian physiology,
exactly.
Not for like silicone. Silicone. It's just like, it's just so weird.
Yeah.
Like how we we just like throw it in there, like with our sci-fi. We need to make it like a lot of them, like with robots, you know, like we make them look like us because the uncanny valley, that all makes sense, especially when we're creating something. Yeah. But when it's aliens, like, and I know we're talking about mammalian physiology or something like it, because if there's just like a gas, like they don't fuck, you know, but like, you know, for the alien species that fuck, it does kind of, I guess, make sense. Like you used the phrase convergent evolution earlier.
Yeah.
So you're arguing that it's possible, or it's like it makes sense that these bipedal humanoids that we have in our stories would also have like all of the members and the physiology that's somewhat compatible. Yeah. Just because that's how evolution solved that particular problem of sexual reproduction for mammals.
Yeah, and that's basically the idea that all these different species in sci-fi went through similar things to where they are the ones. And so here's another theory. Maybe these aliens that are in all of our sci-fi are just the ones that we are able to talk to.
Right.
Because if there are ones that are gas-based or whatever, they might not want to talk to us, or they might not be capable of talking to us. Mm-hmm. So the ones that we communicate with and the ones that we have societies with are the ones that are compatible with us. So therefore, they came from similar evolutionary backgrounds.
So as we're frontiers, men and women into the glory of space, mm-hmm. we already right off the bat we're speciest. We're just like, do
yes,
you want to
absolutely.
Do you need an ambassador for the fish people? Nah, man, because I ask them a question, they go. They're just like, I don't want to hear that shit. I fucking hate that shit. It's grating.
But yeah, part of the reason why we are the smartest ape is we have. There's a bunch of theoretical reasons. There's obviously the concrete ones of us having the largest encephalization for any other ape. That means our brain mass compared to our body mass. But the reason that we are able to do all those things, first off, as mammals have conquered much of the earth, and we're kind of the dominant type of animal in the world because of the fact that at a young age we drink milk. Milk is, and the type of milk that is designed for, that's specifically designed for us. It has perfect balances of like carbs, fat, and protein for a growing baby mm-hmm. of whatever particular species that you're getting it. Mm-hmm. And that helps us develop our entire physical development. So it gives us kind of an advantage when it comes to once we're weaned, we're basically not humans, but other mammals, we're basically ready to go. Once we're grown past needing milk, we're just ready to be that animal.
We can walk around versus like a deer. It's just like comes right out of the birth canal of mama deer. And it's like, all right, where we going?
Yeah.
Let's do this. Chop, chop. I'm going to die in probably 18 days from a car. So here, let's do this. With us, we need to be pampered for a long time.
Yeah. The concept of childhood.
Can even walk.
Right. The concept of childhood is a very uniquely human thing where we basically have easy mode for the entirety of at least the first, I don't know, depending on the person, 11 to like 13 years, 14 years before we go through puberty. Mm-hmm. And that's a long time compared to any other animal. Other animals are completely sexually reproductive within a year or mm-hmm. like a couple of years. So we have this time period where we're doing nothing but learning, mm-hmm. where we're just observing other humans and we're seeing what works for them and how we can communicate and get better at those things. And obviously our communication skills grow the most in that amount of time. And that gives us such an advantage once we actually become sexually mature adults. We learn so much in that time period mm-hmm. that we're vastly ahead of any other animal in the world.
We bake for a long time, but right. when we're out, dude, mwah, delicious. Exactly. These babies are delicious.
We're ready to hunt and find food and do all these things that we need to do. Have you heard of
the study? And it was done by acoustic psychologist. Okay. And that is totally not, I did not make that up. That is a job.
Yeah.
And what they would do is one of the studies that they did is they just made a track of cacophony, mm-hmm. like car honks and just constant things vying for attention at about the same loudness, because we don't mean decibel level. There's another metric in acoustics called loudness, which is like if it's attenuation to your ears. Mm-hmm. That's why we like when we have cell phones, or I mean when we had phones and developed, they chose a particular bandwidth because they were like intelligibility of speech doesn't really matter under like 300-400 hertz, mm-hmm. and it doesn't matter above like 10,000 hertz. Yeah. You can hear me fine and know what I'm saying anywhere in that middle ground, even though there's tons of sounds that go, there's the ultrasonic, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But so they played everything like kind of equally loud so that they could kind of get a good bearing on what we're like the brain is attenuated to, and is like, oh fuck. Yeah. And they were just like played this track for a while, and then they asked all of the participants to name some sounds, and the only consistency was that at one point there's a baby crying, and like everyone heard the baby crying.
Yeah.
And it's just because we're just like, we are so much evolution is just like, your babies suck. You're the pandas of the cosmos, humans. Like, you're an endangered species because it takes too long for you to like make another one of you. You know, we got these fucking beetles over here and they're just knocking them out like nothing. And you're over here being like, hush, little baby, for like 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
This is just out of proportion. And it's just crazy to me that we take so long.
Mm-hmm.
So like, but you're right, that also might be good for spacefaring as well, because like you said, we come out like ahead of the gate.
Yeah.
You know, like we're like the homeschool kid who like gets finally to class and everyone makes fun of you, but then you're like, but just wait, I'm a mathlete. Like we come out like really more intelligent than any of our, primate brother.
Yeah, exactly. We're in an RPG class that has invested everything into intelligence.
We're already prestige, baby.
Yeah, exactly. We decided, and our environment has backed it up, that our S rank, our elite rank intelligence is the most important thing for us to have. And that's
dope.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That's pretty dope.
And it kind of makes sense that other aliens that we're able to communicate with would also have long periods of nursing and teaching their young, because once they have all of that information packed into them, then they're ready to go for the rest of their life. They're ready to go out and think about things like creating spacecraft and doing all of that. So it's really, that part is really fascinating to me, that there's like orangutans are the ones that keep their young around for the second longest of any primate, and that's 9 years. 9 years, and a baby orangutan is ready to go out into the world. But they are also not as social as us. We just have this perfect balance of all these attributes that our environment really rewarded, and that's why I think us wanting to be a spacefaring race would kind of make sense, that the other spacefaring races that we interact the most with in fiction would have an environment that also rewarded them being very good socializers, that would reward them having long terms where they're just learning from their parents, and then with that also reward intelligence. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, so that's kind of why that, back to the initial idea, that's why aliens have boobs. So
yeah, I was totally all against Earth, but that whole speech made me, I was like, you know what, humans are the shit, dude. We're like fucking smart as hell, and bonus, titties exist. I want to get back a little bit to the alien stuff, and specifically Trek, just because that's where I don't consider Star Wars sci-fi.
No.
There's
fantasy.
an invisible bow tie that I'm straightening right now. So like, it was a really funny, weird thing that happens in Star Trek where like Ferengi they have these huge domey ears. Mm-hmm. It's an erogenous zone. And then same thing happens with Worf and his wife early in TNG, or I guess they event because they have a kid together. Like she like plays with his forehead ridges and shit like that because they're both Klingons.
Yeah,
well, she's half Klingon, and it's just like crazy to me that I'm just like, when we decide like whatever thing is very loud to us when we create something, that's got to be boneable. Like that's got to have some function in boning. Yeah, like you see like some weird like fish monster in like Valerian or whatever, and it's got like these like whiskers, and it's like just made of whiskers. You're like, I bet those fucking whiskers do something during sex for them. Like just because that we can't help ourselves, our monkey mind.
It's an avatar, the long hair, the ponytails.
Yeah, they got fucking crazy ponytails and tails. I bet that has to do something with the boning. And that's kind of true though, even though it's not like it's this is a dummy's like layman's understanding of what you're saying, which I'm sure has a lot more credence. But I'm just like, it's true because like when we were walking around and then it was just like, women started developing like bigger breasts, like dudes were like, we gotta do something with these. Like, right guys, this is something, right? And they're like, we don't know, this is crazy, you're asking us. And the women are like, yeah, we don't know, they're just happening. It's like, do we all like them? And everyone say aye. And like women and men raise their hand, yep, we like them. And this is my non-binary, or this is my binary version of caveman. But it's just crazy to me that it's just like anything loud or anything that's different about, like, if you just take basic human shape, like all the things that in the Venn diagram of shapeness of humans or any species, the things that they share, and then just create like a leitmotif of that. Anything that is drastically outside that mold seems to have a sexual connotation.
Sure.
That's weird.
Yeah, and
it's not just the sexual organs,
right?
Which also look very differently often.
Well, and I think things like that obviously would stand out to humans more because we're so visually attuned to the world, because we needed to, early on in our development, we had to develop really good depth perception because apes were running through trees, because we developed from primates who were running along tree branches and needed to be able to judge how far a tree branch was so they didn't fall. And we developed really good color vision because we needed to see how ripe fruit was that we were going to be able to eat. And so, yeah, it makes sense. And especially from a very humanistic perspective, when people when people invent other species, that these things that stand out visually to them are obviously for sex, because this is something that our entire world is based on our vision and the way that we visually perceive things more than anything else. There's things like sounds that affect us in a different, more like deep down, deep rooted way. Like if you play the sound of something, or if you hear something sneaking up behind you, it activates parts of you that are like your fear response and stuff like that are more hardwired in. But our vision is so important to everything that
we're very effective at determining real quick whether it's a snake or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Just, is that a snake? No, that's just a vine. Good. It's just like, how the fuck do you figure that out? I want a bird at some point. Like, I wish I had that shit, because snakes are a big problem for me and my family. We're just like, not a snake. It's like, how did you know it was moving like a snake moves? It's green like a snake sometimes are. I don't know why. And this is, I guess this is
a bird.
This is Eden, where for some reason birds and humans talk and have conversations about snakes. I read this on Reddit. It was today I learned. I thought it was today, but it must have been yesterday, because I can't find it. That's what I was scrolling. I was listening, but I was trying to school for buzzwords. But it was a study that was done fairly recently that was looking at how sexuality in both the minds of usually cisgendered is how they did the study, but it's not. They also included people who were bisexual. They also included trans people in it, but they were trying to make the control group more about the cisgendered types, just to see what that would do, and then kind of not as an afterthought, but then continue the study throughout, what your particular instance is, and what your sexual orientation is. And it was interesting because it seemed like just across the gamut, it seems to be very true. One thing they found, because they were showing different types of pornography or images, and then I don't know how they test this, didn't really, but my guess is that they would just put a needle in your dick. And they would be like, yeah, this guy really likes that. Or something. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but God, I'm glad I'm not a scientist, because they're like, what? How are you going to do this study, Abe? Dr. Abe. I was like, I don't know, needle in the dick? Like, this guy needs to not be a doctor. But yeah, so what they found out, it is more important the curvature and the combination of bones and like the arcing of the body.
Yeah.
And like the shape the body makes. So like imagine a silhouette of a very sexy man or woman. And if they're in a like a very sexy pose, as opposed to just standing there like a dingus, like obviously one is gonna make you feel more sexual thoughts, right? That is a more powerful suggestion to our sexual brain than than clothing being on or off. So you can have like just a naked dingus or a very like clothed, like poised dingus. And you're always going to be like, the attractively posed one is the one that I'm into. It seems to be the trend across our brains because it's more of, and I thought that that was interesting. That were more like, damn girl, that bone structure, as opposed to like, take it off, even though we make jokes about that all the time about like, you know, there's strip joints where the main purpose seems to be in most people's minds the lack of clothing. But actually, according to this, it's more about the dancing.
That does make that makes a lot of sense, because things like fashion and physical adornments and the amount of clothes that people have worn over the ages, those have changed, those alter and vary, but the kind of, I guess, shapes that you're talking about and poses and stuff like that we have found sexually attractive or that are in pinups or whatever, those are basically the same. Like if you want to go through an artistic history of humanity, it's all a similar, like the way that you are suggestive sexually, that hasn't changed in that amount of time. And that's just another thing that lends credence to it. It's just that humans figured it out for like advertising before a scientist actually went in and like,
and it like if I'm dancing sexy at you, more of an indicator that I'm hot to trot than if I just were to take off my shirt right now. You know, like they both say something, but like one says something and the other is just like, maybe he's just hot, like maybe he just needs to take his shirt off. You know, but if I may fuck you eyes at people, which I never do because no one wants that. Rarely do people want fuck me eyes outside of the bedroom, but you know, like especially coming from this monster, I'm just like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? As I furrow my brow and like make my eyes like Steve Buscemi's eyes.
And that makes sense as to why the people can have sexual proclivities for like that. Match up with furries and stuff like that, because we've all seen Lion King and we know that that Nala makes the eyes at Simba at one point,
and you're like, damn.
Exactly.
What the fuck,
what's going on with that lion?
And I'm always just like, I know Ariel's a mermaid, but damn. You know, like because when they get it right, they get it right, because they know, and they are also dealing with like, usually because they draw the most beautiful people,
right?
And the anthropomorphizing of you know, like the furry culture and stuff like that. There's a lot. Like I've actually been to furry cons for research, and there was for research. Now I've been there because Mike and I are writing that furry movie, and it's very interesting because a lot of the artists, they focus on like the facial regions to be animal and like paws and stuff like that, and tails. So once again, the big strokes that make the, you know, if you were to take like a fox and a human and do a Venn diagram, you'd be like, well, you got basic 4, you know, 2 arms, 2 legs, or 4 legs, and you know, you got this going on and stuff like that. Everyone's got a face with 2 eyes. All that seems to be the same. They do draw it in a lot more like Disney-esque way, kind of like you're mentioning with Nala, but the bodies, like these foxes have like, these abs are like nice, you know, like, and all of like they're bending, like the way in which like the contours of like the butt and stuff like that, that all is like very, like it's all super sexy Flanders, you know, it's not like a wolf butt,
right?
It's like
exactly,
it's like a man butt, or a woman butt, and it's very interesting to me because what they choose to include and exclude about the human element and what to include and exclude has variance. Like
Yeah.
not all people are drawing the same thing.
Right.
But it does seem to be like a trend.
Yeah.
Where the most I saw is just a layman arriving and looking around at the art.
Yeah.
You know, pretty cool. And also I noticed like typical nuances.
Yeah. The fursonas can have a wide variety of types and animals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like the expressions and the poses and stuff like that are all going to end up being similar because it's our ape animal brain that's perceiving those, and that's what it's activating.
That's nice butt.
Yeah, exactly.
Dem nice boobs. You know.
That's a sexy come hither pose. That's what that is.
Yeah. And so you think aliens would have some semblance of that?
Yeah, the ones that because of the fact that something that's similar enough to us to communicate with us had to evolve in a similar way, then it makes sense that once they're upright, they're also going to be looking at each other eye to eye, and rather than just like looking at each other from behind all the time. I'll get back on that one point that I said earlier that I would expand on. The theory that breasts allow infants to nurse from their mother's hip. That's one thing that, as a bipedal animal, is extremely important because it means that the mother isn't completely, bedbound when she has a baby. Mm-hmm. She can hold them and they can nurse, they can do their thing while she's still up and moving around, gathering food, doing whatever tasks she needs to do. And it isn't as much of a hindrance, which means that they're more mobile and more able to keep that baby alive for the time that they are the most vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And so you can imagine that other aliens that developed in a similar way to us, that are also bipedal, that also have similar physical structures to us, would do the same thing. That they would need to be able to be mobile and protect that baby or keep it alive for the time that it's most vulnerable. And part of that is being upright and being able to scan and see what's going on, being able to gather and all that stuff. And then eventually that is perceived by the males of the species like, oh, that means this woman is more capable of holding up the baby. And that's one of the theories about it. And so, yeah, that's the convergent evolution thing that I was telling you about is what my idea on it. That's why it makes so much sense to me about in this particular thing is that, of course, the animals, I mean, not the animals, but also aliens, the intelligent species that we want to communicate the most with and that we interact the most with in these fantasy worlds or the sci-fi worlds are the ones that are going to be the most similar to us. And they're the most similar to us because evolution, natural selection has selected similarly on them. And that's why Captain Kirk wants to fuck every alien.
Yeah, I was wondering. He's like, he don't give a fuck, and they don't give a fuck. They're like, I'm down. Yeah, we're all down. So it's a healthy hookup, I guess.
Yeah,
you know. But like, what if it made like a new species? Like they're compatible enough, like a mule, but it's like a screeching. Like horrible baby, like a demon. It's like kill me. It's just Quado. It's just like Kirk has a bunch of Quado children. Look into your mind, Kirk.
That's the episode that we will never see.
Yeah, just like I had another baby, and Kirk's like, yeah, I know. Well, bring him over. We have a trash compactor. Woo! This got dark. Tiberius. You motherfucker. Yeah, no, and Riker too, by extension.
Yep, that's true.
He'd be fucking.
The universe is potentially an infinite sexual buffet.
That's why they call him number one. Yeah, so I like to always end this podcast with a question. So part 1 of 1, what's the weirdest dick? It's the only time I've ever asked this question. But
I don't know.
I'm moved to.
There's... I've had this question about like, what does Chewbacca's dick look like? Is it hairy? Is it like a dog's? What's going on there? I don't know.
Yeah, it could be anything. Well, not anything because he doesn't wear clothes, so It's got to be all like matted up in there.
Yeah, it's got to be in there. Yeah, we just don't know.
Just like At one point, I just want them to be driving, like, cause like they had that Life Day, Chewbacca Life Day, or what are they called? Wookiee Life Day.
Yeah.
And just like they have to have puberty at some point, because he has like a little like rat-nosed, horribly
Lumpwaru,
designed, and he's just reading a story and just gets an erection. And it's just this little red rocket that comes out of this fur mane, and just like no one wants to see that. No one wants to see that. I want to see what Cthulhu's dick looks like.
That's a good question.
Probably another Cthulhu.
It could just have a cloaca. We don't know.
Yeah.
It's a sea creature. Think of what your predator dicks look
like.
like.
Oh, yeah.
No clue.
It's you know what it is? It opens up like their face does, but twist, one of the xenomorph alien things comes out, like the thing, the little baby one.
Yeah, the little mouth inside the mouth.
Is that thing sentient is my big thing. Because it seems to be like independent scream at times.
Sure.
So it knows to be like, wah, at different times that like mom's like, rah. And so it's got to like have its own brain, right? It also looks like a face, so it's got to have a tiny little brain. Do they have conversations?
I don't
Are
know.
They connected?
That's a good question.
These are things I need to know.
We'll answer that in one when we do it about xenomorphs.
Yeah. Do xenomorphs just have a little buddy for their entire life? Just like, go little buddy, pop right through their skulls. You got it, Mom. All right, enough of that. Well, thanks again.
Yeah.
Everybody, hug your mothers. I don't know. All right, that's enough.
Bye.
Bye.